When I'm seeing a lot of sentence level stuff, I will save up. I'll just pop them into a document, 15 or 20 students, or sorry, sentences that my students have composed that are not very effective, right?
Okay.
So when I distribute that, or we look on the projector at those, I say, these all came from you guys,
That's
right?
right.
They have to own it because I didn't get these out of a workbook. These are coming right out of your arguments and so I think you could call out maybe 5 or 6 in a post, or maybe whether that's an announcement or a forum post, and say, well, despite what the rubric says, here's the kind of thing I'm seeing. These I'm quoting these from recent discussion posts.
But all the students could see the discussion
Yep.
post, so then they would know who it is.
Right, so that's why I don't want to do that, because it does get people to shrink back in and they don't.
But then you could take it
But
from
it's a
there.
private list.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if I
Right.
had one from last semester.
That's
Right,
true.
like, here's
Right.
what we had last
Right.
semester, don't do
Right.
this.
Right. That's a good idea.
I did that at the beginning, like in my cinema class, which is in English and Italian. So I took examples from a couple of years ago or whatever, and I was like, these are real examples, and I highlighted even where the issue was in the color, and I had them work together on this. And someone was like, oh my God, these are real sentences written by students, and they were like, no, we would never do that. Yeah.
Well,
And then like it's all happening anyway.
Right.
So I don't know. I haven't been able
There's,
to.
yeah,
get
there's
around
some,
it.
like the effect affect thing I run through, and certain things that are commonly
Right.
confused for students, especially in science. Of actually putting together the entire sentences.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
right.
Mhm.
Because then if you have them work on it together
Yeah.
to try to correct them. But
Yep.
I honestly, like, yes, that works in the moment
Right.
for most of them.
Right.
But do they carry that in?
Right. Well, the question of transfer is one that's crucial, right? And we don't know. I mean, there's a lot of transfer studies going on. Just what happens is first year writing transfer to a sophomore writing class, and you know, it's really not clear, right? How much of this transfers, unless the student is an activist for her own writing, right? So that's one of the issues. Is we're really not sure how much transfers, which is why it seems frustrating. Didn't they get this in freshman comp, right? That's what people always say. Well, yes, they probably did, but if they're not writing in every class, every semester, it's going to fade away. That's why I feel like we have a responsibility, but so does everyone else, right? What we really need to work on is that students write in more classes and write more routinely, and it becomes just an absolute common part of their experience as college students. And we know from, I think I'm right, on the NSSE data, the National Survey of Student Engagement, that URI students report, URI seniors report writing very little in their 4 years, 5 years at URI. And they write very few long papers, which doesn't upset me that much, but the fact that they say I didn't write very much is a problem. So, you know, if we're seeing this across the disciplines, then you need to encourage more colleagues to, you know, to try to embed more writing in their courses.
But what about like transferring from just one assignment to the next assignment?
To the next assignment, I would hope that does happen more than maybe transfer from one course to another, but
I mean, like the same stage transfer. I don't know if we're saying the same thing. You could go to the next one and the next one, and even something as simple as when you're describing a scene in a movie, it's in the present tense. The narrative.
Right.
That's not rocket science. You know what I mean? Like at a certain point,
yeah.
I don't know.
I think you have to set a model for the first assignment. Show them something good. Show them something good and make up the first version of it, and ask them to discuss the difference between the one that you've actually done that's lousy and the new one. Why are these changes made? What is it? Then you have, as you know, you have to have an exercise or an assignment that teaches that, and then the next assignment needs to teach that and then build something else on it, so that you're repeating the exercise.
If that's in a writing class, I think it's
Yeah.
easier, but if it's something that's totally like
It's a
environment-
skill, though. If you
Yeah.
think of it not as a writing assignment, but as a skill, then you build from one skill onto another.
No, I understand that,
That's,
yeah.
I mean,
The hard part though, so we have essays that students have to write in biology, and then some of them, some faculty will say, I don't care about whether or not they did, and if their grammar was right, their spelling was right,
Mhm.
as long as they get the content.
Mhm.
That's all I
Mhm.
care about. And then some of us are like, this, I can't even read this.
Yeah.
Even though the content's right.
Yeah,
It,
that's
it,
tough.
It's
as
the
a
old
reader, it
form
makes it
and
really hard for me to read it.
form
So-
versus content argument.
So,
And
so
like,
now
Centuries
we're
old.
grading differently.
Right.
I mean, I always say to students that I'm educating them so that their letter of application for a job will get them the interview.
That's right.
And that the truth is that if they get out there with that improper grammar and stuff, the URI diploma will do them no good whatsoever. They won't get an interview. They
That's
need
a
to
good
get
argument.
dressed.
Yeah.
And that's very convincing to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a partner in a couple of our classes, writing classes, which is GTech, an international company based in Providence. When they're hiring an intern, the application asks them to explain how to tie a shoe. If they can't write a paragraph about how to tie a shoe, they're not going to get the internship at GTech. Now that's not rocket science either, but that's how they weed students out. It's not a very challenging writing task, but they can use that to say, So I think the form versus content thing, I'm glad you're upholding that there isn't a difference. I think if you can't follow the content because of the problems in the delivery,
Yeah.
that's an issue. That means that the content
That's not
can't.
consistent within it.
Right,
But
right.
that's that part of, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
so
the
some
So tell
students
them what
are-
I said. No. But you're fighting the good fight on that. I don't think there should be a division between form and content. Teachers who feel overworked and burdened by this whole responsibility will divide it, right? Especially if it's not a writing class. Because they want to know that the students have command of the material, but they're going to say, but the writing doesn't count. Well,
Yeah.
the writing is the mechanism to deliver the fact that they know it or not. So how can it not count? Of course it counts. It counts about the credibility and the ethos of the writer. I
Right.
mean, there's just,
But then the argument goes back to your recommendation of feedback is for drafts.
yeah,
And again, so your content is biology, and some of your faculty may feel like, I don't have time for the draft with the feedback and then the final with the grade because
Yeah.
it's not what
Well,
I'm really,
It's an essay on an exam,
yeah.
right? So
Okay.
the next
yeah.
feedback they get would just be for their
But
sport
then-
test, that's it, right?
but
So
then-
there's not a lot of chance to
You
give
know-
them feedback.
But, like a little writing warm-up kind of thing in Sakai on the questions leading up
Mhm.
might give you a chance to do
Mhm.
some kind of
That's true.
examples. We
Mhm.
do that in the library classes because there's a lot of writing in their final projects. So we may have a writing warm-up that's about the last class or something about what do you think about what we're gonna do today or what about this concept or issue, short.
Yeah, just
I
writing
tell them,
it.
you have like 3 minutes to write, and then you could pick some of those examples. But I totally understand because we hear it all the time, and I think everyone's up against that.
Yeah.
I have my content, but the writing is important. It's
Right.
the same
Mhm.
thing with information research skills. Nobody ever checks all of the citations that students submit, but they're the rock of what they're writing about. So they're similar
Yeah, they are.
similar conundrums.
Yep. Conundrum's
Gotta
a
do
good word.
little things.
Yes, yes. Joan?
Just comment on a question. One of the things we realize that we have to do in computer science is that because we've been dissatisfied with the computing skills and math skills that this academy provide into our programs, is that we need to engage with public school teachers. I was wondering, I would just encourage you to do that because my son went through the South Kingstown school system. And it used to really make me upset. He would come home with papers with comments, and I asked him, so now you need to rewrite it? No, this is just the grade. So I don't even think you look at the comments, and I always try to be sensitive because I used to be a public school teacher. I know what it's like. So, you're gonna have some very useful information for
Mm-hmm.
public school teachers on how they can really improve these skills in the students before they even reach
Mhm.
the university,
Mhm.
so we don't have to start,
Right.
at a certain point. Then my question is this. A lot of the reading and revision of student writing that we do in my discipline is when students are preparing a dissertation or a thesis. But many of our students are students that do not speak English
Yeah, that's a good question. Typically, non-native speakers need way more time to write something that's ready for readers, right? And they're going to need a lot more intervention, and they're going to need a lot more support. Now, they tend to understand the grammar and the rules of the English language really well, so it's easier to say, here's a handbook. You know, I have a student in my class right now. I just gave her a handbook to use for the semester because she needs that, right? She needs, and it makes her feel empowered to look something up, figure it out, and fix it, right? But I don't think we can have quite the same standards, honestly, for native speakers and non-native speakers. Obviously, it has to get to the point where the work will eventually be publishable for a thesis or dissertation, but I think it's probably going to tack on weeks and weeks of additional time for those students, and more work for the faculty. There's no doubt about that. I mean, one of the things we need to do is get more second language specialists on the faculty, right? Because I'm not a second language specialist, but they do exist, and I just don't think we have enough of them. We don't have a dedicated writing center ESL specialist. You know, we should.
If there were
Yeah.
if there was a class or
Mhm. Yep.
a center where we could ask the students to go
Yep.
and get support
Yep.
in this process.
So I tend to, I can't, if you're grading for correctness and you're grading ESL students, they're always going to fail, right? If you're just grading for clean, precise language, no errors at all. I mean, when I first started out, the program I taught in had 4 mistakes per page equals an automatic F. Well, the students whose first language wasn't English would never pass, right? So I just don't think, I mean, it's just harder. I'd hate to have to go to a foreign country and try to pass a class. That's all I know.
I know that usually I do one revision before even looking at the science, because
Yeah.
I find for me
Yeah.
as a reader,
That's good.
until
Right.
you know the grammar and the
Right.
structure is
Yeah.
down, then I can't really.
It's where this form and content division gets really tough, right? When, you know, it's hard to know what do they know about the content because I can't really decipher the form.
Well, I love the feedback that your students give to ours in the social issues
Mm.
class, and that is, I would see a comment on a grading paper that said, there were spelling and grammar errors, but nothing that interfered with the understanding, and therefore there was an adjustment made, and that was, you know, I thought, wow, that's really,
That's true.
that's appropriate.
Right.
because-
That's a good rubric standard, is that the errors and mistakes that are there do not impede meaning.
Right.
They're going to be there, but they don't make you, you know, stop, reread, puzzle. It's you,
And I think that also makes the point to the students that
right,
it has
right.
to be, you know,
right,
to a certain level.
right.
For that reason.
And it's also important to point out that it's been a number of years ago, but a famous linguistics professor, I can't think of his name, got an essay published in a journal that had 40 errors in it.
Language error.
Yes. And it had been out, you know, it was published and it had been out, and then he wrote a note to the profession and said, guess what? Look again. And Joseph Williams, The Phenomenology of Error. And then when you know they're there, you start seeing them. Nobody expected to find errors in a publication in a journal on the languages. So nobody saw anything until he said, I think there are 38. There's 38 errors. Then you start looking, oh my God, there are 38 errors. But it's context is everything. We see student writing as full of errors because that's what we expect to see, right? We're looking for it.
Or in our discipline, when we write code on the board, as an example, some of my students in the past would take that code and try to compile it and get it to run. And then they would come and complain, and they'd say, there are errors in your code, it doesn't run. And I'm like, take it as pseudocode.
Drop your idea across.
Yeah.
And you're never going to be writing code on paper anyway, because you're going to have a compiler that's going to prompt you, you know, to the syntax as you write it. So, maybe English was, maybe there are some parallels.
There
between
probably
what I
are.
wrote and
There probably are, right.
Yeah,
So,
you have
yeah.
editors who help you with the spelling and grammar now, too. So-
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know, copy editors make a lot of money for good reason. Everybody needs a copy editor. Everybody. It's just a fact. So some of that we can't expect perfection. We're not asking for perfection, right?
Error is
Yeah, yeah. I just want to, I'm sure everybody got a handout, but it's got that mantra I shared, which is to give descriptive goal-directed feedback to directed facilitated revision while avoiding overkill and contradictory advice. I didn't actually address a hierarchy of concerns, but that's in the middle there. I think for most projects when they're drafts, the number one concern is something we call content focus, thesis, ideas, purpose, and then next you would want to look at development or support. Third, pay attention to organization or the order of the ideas, then coherence and transitions, and finally style and correctness. So it might help just when you're struggling about what should I focus on. If you're commenting on drafts, you might just focus on the first three and forget about the other three until the next version. And then a couple reminders at the bottom. So this can be a takeaway. Yes, there's extras if you want to take them.
For my friend, Rhonda. But like, here's one question. If we have time.
Yeah, we have time. We have 5 minutes.
So I'm a second language, instructor. I teach Italian language. So and I'm also teaching English. So I'm coming at this from both sides. One thing I'm finding with native English speakers writing in English now is the diction. They just use words. They're not even the right words. Like they're just make up the meaning. And some of the times I can tell what they're trying to say. But is that one of those? And a lot of times I have no idea because they string them together and there's when they're using words that don't mean what they think they're meaning or want to mean. What do you do? I mean, is that because that's at the bottom of the thing? But I find that's
well, if it impedes meaning, it moves up, right? If it's an error that impedes meaning, then it has to get your attention, right?
Okay.
So you can't get to the focus, the purpose, and those things if you're stuck on a word choice. So I think in that case you can certainly do something with it, circle it, write a question mark, say thesaurus. Did you use a thesaurus? Might be a good question. Anybody else have any ideas on that?
Like what I say is, can a society? I'm trying to think of one that he said, like a society consensus something, whatever, things that don't go together. I'm like, can a society consensus things? But I don't know how to help beyond that.
Well, I think one comment that helps is, did you read this aloud? Question mark. Because reading aloud is one way to really, for people to edit their own work. And that's a signal without being too rude, right? That they needed to give it more attention. It's probably better than going awk, right? So did anybody else have?
No, the reading aloud is huge. And just the question, are you sure this is the word?
What you mean, yeah.
Are you sure this is what you mean? Circle that word. And that way, because it could have been, spell check error. It could have been that they just confused the meanings of two words. But the reading aloud.
But I think reflecting your experience as a reader is a fair thing to do. So if you say this word confuses me,
right.
That's a fair comment to make. Or even I have no idea what you mean.
Well, what I have been saying is I honestly cannot tell what you are trying to
yes,
say.
that's fine. That's fair.
That's the reader, right?
As a
So
reader,
just
I have
really,
no
I'm
idea
not
what you're trying to
be
say.
mean, but
Right.
I'm like,
Right.
WTF.
Right.
So did you say this was native speakers?
Yes.
Native
Yeah.
speakers.
And what's weird is they're making prepositional mistakes all the time, and that's not the kind of mistakes
you've
that
seen.
native speakers ever used to make. Really weird.
The culture is changing,
Yeah, because they're not reading it.
right? I mean, part of this, the students come to us out of a culture, right?
Yeah.
They're not. This is not their individual fault or something. They're not like
Right.
lacking in character.
The hard part
It's-
though is that impedes my reading. Like I catch up like that's wrong. Like
Right.
I
It's
can't.
hard.
Yeah,
It's hard not to be
hard.
like,
Yep.
Right.
but
Yes.
it's true. It's not their necessarily.
Right, right. So, but I think calling out to them, this is what's hard for me in figuring out how to respond to your writing. I'm struggling with responding to your writing for the following reasons. Just share it with
See,
them.
but so you mentioned this before, and I'll use an example. If somebody starts a sentence with "and," that might make it hard for me to read, and I might want to comment on that, but that apparently is appropriate. So.
In
That's
some
just-
context,
in
in
some
some
this-
context.
But I grew up with a nun hitting me with a ruler if I did that. So for me, it's never appropriate. So I mean, at what
Yeah.
point do I give up?
I know,
Well,
some
I
of
think
them you
What's-
have to
if it's
give
a
up.
stylistic choice for the writer, but it sounds like some of these writers aren't yet
It's not a conscious choice.
sophisticated
Yeah.
enough to make that stylistic
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah, I think it's just a mistake. It's just, I don't
You,
think
but
it's
you know, you can ask the question: is this a
Right.
stylist?
This
Is this a deliberate choice?
Well, sometimes I think that this generation comes from a culture that speaks a different language from the language that we speak.
Mm-hmm.
Think of the hip hop culture and the way that words are used in different ways. My discipline of computing is I would describe as a very creative culture. So we're always inventing things, and sometimes my colleagues who are from other countries get angry because if you're a computer scientist and you're an American, you're writing a research paper and you're defining a new term for a construct that you've developed, you're allowed to do that as long as you define it well. But if you're from another country, somehow you're not in the community of scholars, you're not given permission
That right.
for you because you're not using the word correctly. But if you're an American,
Aha.
somehow you know. And so we're talking about kids who are coming from international culture, which is of youth, which is different from
Mm-hmm.
the American culture that, it's not different. In that way, it's not different from international students coming in. We're not giving them permission to change the meaning and so on in the ways that they're used to amongst their peers, but there are ways that you can do that and say, if you're going to use that term in this way, I don't get how you're using it, you need to define it, or something like that. That would be,
That's useful. I like that.
yeah.
I like that. Anything else? Do you feel inspired? That would be my goal,
Some.
or at least guided a little bit.
Yeah.
That would be
Yeah.
great.
Well, it
It's
helps
a
lot on the
daunting-
workload thing,
Yeah,
because I think
yeah.
that's, people don't give assignments to rewrite and so
Right.
on because they
Yeah.
Right.
think, oh my God.
No,
I
the
have to
workload
grade
is
all those
huge.
papers.
I know. I know.
So that's really, that for me is great.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the equation is how much can you really do? And that's why I say it's not all on you. You don't have to spend 4 hours on someone's paper because ideally that student will have other professors and instructors who care about their writing and give them opportunities. So it's not on you to produce individually to produce a good writer. It takes all of us.
Yeah.
And I also liked your, one of your comments about that not all the assignments have to be enormously long.
Right,
That
right.
shorter things can be
Yes.
just as
That's true.
effective.
Yes. Yes.
Especially if
I-
they're feedback.
Yep. Yep.
I think that's
And
important.
those can include something like a process piece, like how did it go writing this, right? You could include a process piece after an exam. How did you do? Why do you think you did well? How, that could be a piece that you may only read a few of them, but you ask them to write about something concrete and recent.
So that reminds me that in the field of mathematics and science, there's evidence-based information on how having students write just a few sentences before they take the first few minutes before they take an
I've
exam,
heard
and
this.
the relationship to the discipline helps sort of clear out the
Yep.
working memory. And is this also consistent within a writing class where they're expected, or an exam where they're expected to do
Sure,
something?
sure. And a lot of writing classes start with that kind of focused free writing where, you don't worry about the grammar, the spelling,
We do
just,
that a lot.
write to the prompt, get some ideas on paper. Warm-ups. Mary, you call it warm-up
Yeah.
writing. Yeah. No, it's very useful. And no one has to read that. It can just be for the student, Yeah.
I have my students do a timed free write, like a zero draft, right? It's not even the first draft, just where they can get everything out. It's not necessarily connected, they're not thinking about grammar and then they can either keep it if they want to use it,
Mhm.
or they can throw it away. I never looked at it, but it helps get over that initial,
Mm-hmm.
hurdle of putting something
Gotta
on
get
paper
something
and making
down.
it cohesive.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Great. Well, thanks everybody.
Thank
Good
you.
comments. Yeah.
Thank you.